Is the alliance that kept the world safe for 70 years about to crumble over an island of ice? NATO troops have landed in Greenland, and the Kremlin is issuing extraordinary warnings. And President Trump is hinting that the U.S. could pull out of NATO entirely if Europe doesn't back down. Over in the Middle East, U.S. aircraft carriers are rushing back. Military activities have been reported over Mexico, and a new world order is being openly discussed by world leaders from Beijing to Washington. And quietly in the background of all of this noise, priestly guilds in Israel are using DNA technology to prepare for a third temple. Hey everyone, it's DinaKalmeta here, and we're going to dig into these headlines and look at the lines that have been crossed around the world. Let's start with Israel. The Board of Peace has got a lot of people talking, especially due to the characters that have been invited. Right now, the president has invited Egypt, Turkey, Argentina. The Jordanian king is considering the invite to join the Peace Council. Pakistan. 6 countries confirmed the United States invitations to the Gaza Peace Board: Jordan, Greece, Cyprus, Pakistan, Hungary, and India. But some are showing caution on Trump's broader Board of Peace amid fears for the UN. They're calling it a Trump United Nations that ignores the fundamentals of the UN Charter. And did I mention Russia was invited? This is all forming very interestingly. But I want to take you to this first report from Prophecy Newswatch, and we're just going to do a quick summary over their explanation for the Board of Peace. And I have to tell you, it's very interesting. The report goes on to read that President Trump's Gaza Peace Initiative has entered a complex new phase with multiple overlapping boards and committees designed to oversee governance, reconstruction, and security in the Strip. While Trump chairs a symbolic Board of Peace, operational authority is divided among a formally announced Executive Board of Peace. This board is largely symbolic, intended to lend legitimacy and oversight to the U.S.-led peace plan. Its official membership has not yet been fully revealed, but multiple world leaders have hinted at acceptance, as I just mentioned, including Canada's Prime Minister. The BOP, or the Board of Peace, is meant to supervise the overall peace initiative, providing high-level direction while leaving day-to-day execution to subordinate boards. According to the White House, the BOP will oversee diplomacy, infrastructure development, and economic strategy across Gaza. But participation reportedly comes with a $1 billion buy-in, signaling the high stakes of influence within this symbolic body. Now, beneath the BOP sits the Executive Board of Peace, a formally announced operational body that executes the strategic directives of the BOP. Here are its members: Nikolay Mladenovic, the High Representative for Gaza; Marco Rubio, United States Secretary of State; Steve Witkoff, United States Special Envoy to the Middle East; Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law; Tony Blair, former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom; Mark Rowan, CEO of Apollo Global Management; Ajay Banga, President of the World Bank; Robert Gabriel Jr., American Political Advisor. This board functions as the executive engine for the BOP, overseeing portfolios critical to Gaza's stabilization, investment, reconstruction, and international coordination. The Gaza Executive Board, on the ground operational board, are some of those same names with 2 additional. Yakur Gabi, he's a business person; Sigrid Kaag, United Nations Special Coordinator for the Middle East Peace Process. The GEB works directly with the NCAG, coordinating reconstruction, service delivery, and stabilization programs across Gaza. So those are some of the names. But what are the implications for Israel? This structure places Israel at a disadvantage. Countries historically critical of Israel, particularly Turkey and Qatar, have direct influence over Gaza's operational governance through the GEB. And now Russia wants to join. The Executive Board of Peace, acting on BOP directives, also includes international members with influence over reconstruction and investment priorities. Historically, UN agencies such as the UNRWA have faced infiltration and operational challenges, raising concerns that international oversight could create similar risks. Israel's strategic control over Gaza is effectively minimized, while foreign actors gain authority over governance, security, and humanitarian aid. From a biblical standpoint, these developments echo writings in scripture about the nations aligning against Israel. Zechariah chapter 12 verse 3 states, "All the nations of the earth will come against Jerusalem." The layered governance structure of the BOP, Executive Board of Peace, the GEB, the NCAG, the ISF, and the CMCC illustrates how modern geopolitical structures can formalize international pressure against Israel. While the initiative is framed as a peace and reconstruction effort, the combination of symbolic, operational, and local boards ensures Israel has limited input, leaving it largely on the sidelines of decisions that directly affect its security and interests. Now, Daniel 9:27 talks about a covenant that the Antichrist will confirm with Israel and many others. And that covenant or peace agreement will be for 7 years. Now, I don't see any numbers here in this particular peace agreement. I always held the belief that the Abraham Accords was the template for Daniel 9:27, not necessarily Daniel 9:27's peace covenant, but a template for it. But the way this one is being constructed, I don't know. It's very interesting. Now, with that said, another headline, and this comes from Prophecy Recon, but another headline in regards to Israel and prophecy is quietly taking place in the background. Preparations once thought impossible are shaping in Jerusalem. A new and fast growing network of Kohanim and Levites, men whose lineage traces back to Israel's priestly families, is moving beyond symbolic remembrance towards practical readiness. What was once limited to prayer, study, and longing has become structured training, complete with instruction in priestly duties, worship practices, and hands on with temple vessels. These efforts are not theoretical, they are intentional, organized, and grounded in identity passed down through generations. At the heart of this movement is a desire to restore responsibility alongside heritage. Leaders of these emerging priestly guilds emphasize discipline, standards, and preparation rather than spectacle. Life size replicas of temple implements, formal instruction, and community accountability are transforming ancient callings into living practice. For families scattered across the globe by exile, the convergence in Jerusalem represents more than cultural revival. It is a reclaiming of purpose tied directly to the biblical narrative of Israel's worship. Scripture repeatedly points to a future temple and renewed priestly service in the last days. We see that in Daniel 9:27, Matthew 24:15, 2 Thessalonians 2:4. The quiet reformation of priestly infrastructure suggests that the logistical and spiritual groundwork for such events is already being laid. While no temple stands yet, the readiness of priests and Levites underscores how quickly prophetic conditions could shift. What many dismiss as distant theology is step by step becoming tangible reality. Now let's talk about Iran because things can get heated pretty quickly. Fox News is reporting that at least one U.S. aircraft carrier is being moved towards the Middle East as tensions with Iran continue to build. U.S. military assets from air, land, and sea are expected to flow into the region in the coming days and weeks to provide the president with military options should he decide to carry out strikes against Iran. The movements are part of what officials described as a process of setting the force. One well-placed source said if the president decides to carry out military action, this will be different, more offensive. The source said that U.S. military planners are preparing a range of options that would depend on Iran's regime acts in the coming days. U.S. officials confirmed to Fox News that there are currently about 30,000 U.S. troops assigned to the U.S. Central Command region. Missile defense systems are also expected to be sent to the region to bolster the defense of U.S. U.S. bases and Israel. The systems would include missile defense assets, according to the sources. Now, Newsweek is reporting that Mike Waltz stated that Trump is a man of action, not endless talk like we see at the United Nations. He has made it clear that all options are on the table to stop the slaughter in Iran. And no one should know that better than the leadership of the Iranian regime. The Iranian president said that any aggression against the supreme leader of our country is tantamount to a full-scale war against the Iranian nation. Now, with that said, President Trump has stated that he is looking for a regime change, and Politico was the one that reported this. In conclusion, it remains unclear when the Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group will be near Iran after transitioning westward across the Indian Ocean. The U.S. military may further bolster its offensive and defensive capabilities in the Middle East in the coming days. So, very interesting developments here. Everyone had expected that President Trump would strike Iran last week, but in an about face, he changed his mind. There were rumors that Israel wasn't prepared for the strike. There were also rumors that it wouldn't topple the regime. A lot was being said why he quickly changed his mind, and the Iranian people felt almost abandoned. And the Iranian regime had admitted to taking thousands of lives. So it didn't make sense that President Trump would just walk away from this after he had already told the Iranian people that help was on the way. So I guess time will tell, and we'll find out if and when it happens. With that said, let's move along and talk about what is going on with Greenland. Greenland has suddenly become the most dangerous piece of real estate on Earth. We have European troops landing, Russia watching, and the United States threatening to walk away from NATO completely. A NATO giant just warned it could be the end of the world if the alliance crumbles over this. It sounds like a plot of a movie, but it is real life. The battle for Greenland is tearing the West apart. France has issued a formal warning to the U.S. over its ambitions in Greenland. In response, President Trump has hinted that the U.S. could pull out of NATO entirely if allies do not play ball. He is doubling down with threats of blistering tariffs on Europe. Think about what that means. The alliance that stood against the Soviet Union is now fighting over an island in the Arctic. And the military planning is already underway. The Sun reports that NATO is actually planning for fighter jet dogfights over Greenland. And watching all of this with delight is Russia. The Kremlin has issued an extraordinary statement opposing any U.S. takeover of Greenland, aligning themselves curiously with Europe against Washington on this issue. Meanwhile, the UK is preparing for a long conflict. Global threats continue to grow. And in response, the UK is increasing the age limit for reservists. They are now calling up soldiers as old as 65. It's no denying that Europe is preparing for war, and they aren't sure if the US will be on their side. Meanwhile, Canada's getting aggressive. It's being reported by the Gateway Pundit that we've come to the point where Liberal Canada is showing its true colors, and its Prime Minister went to China, as I reported last week, to find a reliable partner away from the U.S. But what has been hidden away from the headlines was a much graver statement by Mark Carney, the suggestion that Canadians are ready to defend Greenland against the United States. Here's the quote: "We are NATO partners with Denmark, and our full-fledged alliance remains in force. Our obligations under Article 5 and Article 2 of the North Atlantic Treaty are unchanged, and we firmly and unconditionally support them." Carney inserted himself in the Greenland controversy by warning that Greenland's future will not be decided by President Trump. Politico reported that the future of Greenland is a decision for Greenland and for the Kingdom of Denmark. Carney urged NATO allies, including the U.S., to respect their commitments as he stressed Canada's support for Danish sovereignty over the strategically vital Arctic island, which Trump has threatened to seize. When Carney says that the full NATO partnership with Denmark stands and that he is ready to fulfill his obligations under Article 5, he is saying that Canada will stand militarily against the U.S. Now, this is hard to believe, of course, but it's a very effective way of burying the bilateral relations with Washington now that Carney is all about China. Poland has warned a NATO alliance that collapse over Trump's Greenland threats would be the end of the world as we know it. Speaking at a press conference, he said an attempt to take over a NATO member state by another NATO member state would be a political disaster. It would be the end of the world as we know it. Germany's defense minister said that the mission aims to explore options for ensuring security in light of Russian and Chinese threats in the Arctic. Greenland's deputy prime minister said that soldiers of NATO are expected to be more present in Greenland from today and in the coming days. It is expected that there will be more military flights and ships. He said that soldiers from several NATO countries will be in Greenland on a rotation system. The phrase New World Order used to be a conspiracy theory. Now it's a press release. A top Trump advisor has been quoted in the media saying explicitly that the U.S. president is creating a new world order. That's a headline. This isn't about American politics. It's a signal to the entire globe that the old rules no longer apply and the world is listening. Bloomberg reports that the Chinese president is welcoming a stream of world leaders who are shaken by this new order. Leaders from Europe, Asia, and the global south are flocking to Beijing, trying to figure out where they fit in a world where America is changing the game. So, if you have the West fracturing over Greenland, you have the Middle East preparing for both war and a mega peace deal. And you have China positioning itself as the alternative for scared nations. It's a global reshuffling of power unlike anything we have seen since World War II. Meanwhile, reports last week say that the U.S. Federation Aviation Administration had issued a startling alert. They are warning of military activities that took place in the airspace over Mexico and Central America. Reports from the New York Times confirm that the United States is pressing Mexico hard to allow U.S. forces to operate directly on Mexican soil to fight the cartels. This could be a major escalation. For decades, Mexico has fiercely protected its territory from U.S. military intervention, but the pressure is now at a breaking point. This isn't happening in a vacuum. It fits a pattern where the U.S. is asserting dominance over its hemisphere like never before. The warning of military activity in the skies south of the border suggests that we might be moving from a war on pharmaceuticals to an actual military conflict on our southern doorstep. And remember, when you hear about military activity over Central America, you have to ask who is operating there? We know Russia and China have been building influence in Latin America, and it looks like the Western Hemisphere is locking down. For students of Bible prophecy, none of this is shocking. We know that in the last days there will be a realignment of nations. We know that there will be a push for a global peace deal in the Middle East, specifically one that many will trust but which will ultimately fail. We know that there will be preparations for a temple because a third temple will exist because the Antichrist has to go in there, declare himself as God, and perform the abomination of desolation. And we know that rumors of wars will happen, and we're living in that right now. So definitely prophecy taking place right before our very eyes. And I want to hear from all of you. Tell me what you think about what's going on with Greenland and Mexico and Israel, God's prophetic time clock. I want to hear from you. So leave your comments below. Also, when you have a free moment, come and visit me on my social media pages as well as my website at www.cww7news.com. All right, everybody, thank you so much for watching. And until next time, God bless and stay safe.